Hey there, folks. Welcome to the program. I have an interview that is so special and so important, I can practically not contain myself in introducing it to you. My guest is Yeonmi Park. She escaped from North Korea. Her story is unlike anything you will ever hear. Some of it is graphic, I should warn you, but this is important. I hope you'll share it everywhere you can. And here it is. Growing up in North Korea, because most people know nothing of what it is to live in what is really a slave state.
Yeah, it's when I often say what North Korea is like, it's more isolated than even other planets so far. We know that little about North Korea. It's completely isolated nation by their own choice. By the leaders in the country, they chose to isolate people. And when I was growing up in North Korea, I had no clue that I was even oppressed, because the oppression, the vocabulary was not part of the word that we were allowed to know. The regime controlled us to the point. They decided what words we can know and what words we cannot know.
I see that when you say this, it sounds made up. I mean, it sounds like most Americans in high school read 1984 by George Orwell, and you think, oh, this is a dystopian novel. It's a crazy idea. But the fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the fact is that Yeonmi lived this. You're not exaggerating. This is true. And while we're sitting here now, it's happening now.
Yeah. People don't even know the word love in North Korea.
Again, it sounds like you're making it up. You mean this literally.
Yeah. It's the only love, though, we are allowed to know is like our love towards the dear leader.
The dear leader.
That is the only
Kim
time we are allowed
Jong-un.
to use that word.
So,
not about like another human being.
We know communism is evil. We know big state authoritarianism is evil. But it has never been more perfectly accomplished than in the nation of North Korea. There has never been a place in the world so perfectly isolated where the people are enslaved, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally.
Yeah. North Korea has two types of dictatorship. One is physical dictatorship, and that's a lot of countries try, right? Like even Soviet Union, in China, the people are not allowed to move different states. They don't have freedom of speech. They don't have a freedom of movement. They don't have a freedom of religion. The second thing called North Korea coined this term like emotional dictatorship. Nazi Germany had the dictatorship of the mind, where you literally enslave people in their minds. And that's a lot powerful dictatorship than just physical dictatorship. And therefore, when I was living in North Korea, I was even afraid to think, because I believed that the dictators could read my mind.
I want to talk about your story. You grew up in this world. You talk about being literally hungry. And again, when people say hungry, we always say, oh, I'm hungry. Talk about eating bugs and leaves to survive, to put something in your stomach.
That's how I survive, eating grasshoppers and dragonflies and eating plants and flowers. But I think I'm a mother myself, and thinking about it in North Korea, the regime does not accept formula as aid. Even the international community begging to give the regime formula, medical supplies to the people. They say no to the aid because they want us to be starving. They want us to be powerless.
You talk about many difficult things. Again, most of this is incomprehensible to Americans, but when we're talking about a system of total state control, not sort of total state control, any kind of capitalism, trade is illegal. Everything must come from the state. Not most things, everything is controlled by the dictator and the state. So even to trade or to have a little business is completely illegal and punishable by horrible things.
Yeah, killing, death. Political prison camps or prison camps. The word profit is banned in North Korea.
I guess you learn to live with that. You learn to control your thoughts, you control your words. But you said that one time your father, you describe your father in here. Of course, he dies, and it's one of the most moving things in the book. But your father, and you inherited this from him, was very bright, very entrepreneurial, creative thinking, which is not good if you're living in a place like North Korea. In a way, he was able to used this to his advantage to help the family a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was born in 1993, and that's when after Soviet Union collapsed. So until Soviet Union collapsed, North Korea was doing relatively okay because they were getting heavy subsidy from Soviet Union. Once they go collapse and they stopped subsidizing North Korea's economy, and that's when millions of dying from starvation. And the regime just decided not to feed people. So the people like my father realized that, if the regime decide not to feed us, how do we learn? What do we eat? So they thought like, okay, we gotta engage in black market trading. We need to sell something and then make a little margin on it. So imagine you buy a fish from Fish Town and then you go to inner lands and then you get a margin on top, a little bit of that, and sell in the black market, right? So they started doing that work, and that's how my father fed us through selling dried fish, grains, clocks, clothes, and later metals like copper and silver.
Okay, so this was totally illegal,
Yeah.
but because the officials were so corrupt, they would get a piece of the action. They would get a bribe, and they made this happen. And when things got very desperate, your father, who just sounds like he was an amazing man, he took dramatic risks and he started trading in metal, which became very, very dangerous, but he was desperate.
Yeah, that was kind of the only way he could feed us, provide for his family. He took a lot of risk. He knew he was taking that risk.
So eventually he was caught and taken to where?
So before they sentence you, they need to investigate you. And that's where most of beating and torture begins. So he was sent to in Pyongyang, where the investigation center. And I heard that he was so tortured and he got swollen like a balloon. And later he got malnutrition where he lost every hair on his head. And so from that point, I didn't get to hear from him. And in North Korea, we don't, have like the working phone calls or mail or writing letter to anybody. And of course, prisoners don't even get that right. Normal people cannot even write a letter to the other person. Nothing works. There's no post office that working in the country. Like nothing works. So we just hoping that he was alive.
Most Americans are not familiar with torture, and anybody familiar with Nazi Germany or many of these dark regimes, it's tough for us to comprehend what other human beings suffer. Yomi, how old were you when your father disappeared, when he was taken away?
Between 8 and 9.
So you remember this, I think, vividly.
I do.
You do.
Yeah.
When you decided somehow to leave North Korea, and this is really the beginning of many more terrible things, but how old were you at that point?
I was 13 years old.
13.
Yeah.
You happened to live on the border, near the border with China. So you had some awareness that there's a place beyond this border. What did you know about what's beyond the border?
So it was very easy. I was living in the border town of North Korea, and at nighttime, I was able to see the lights, electricity lights coming from that side. And that's when we just got a clue. Maybe if we go to China, they might have some food for us.
It was that simple.
It was that simple.
You're not thinking about freedom, you're thinking about food.
We don't even know the word of freedom that time. We don't even know the concept of freedom.
Right.
So it was just simply searching for a bowl of rice.
So there's much more which is in your book, In Order to Live, which I fully demand everyone listening to this program buy a copy and pay your children, your spoiled American children, to read the book. So when you're 13, your sister, who's a little bit older than you, somehow gets the idea to escape.
She escapes. So she and I was going to escape together, but I got horribly sick. So I was hospitalized.
I forgot about this. Tell us the story. What happened to you?
So one day when we were preparing escaping together, walking downstairs, I got horrible stomach ache. So they had to take me to the hospital. And of course, in North Korea, we don't have like emergency cars. We don't have the phones. How do you even dial it? So my parents just like piggybacked me and walked to the hospital. And a lot of children died that way. So that's what I remember from that day. And then doctors would refuse to operate on me. And my mom had to bribe the doctor, and she didn't have the money.
Okay, so this is basic, that if you can't pay, they will let you die. And so your mother finds a way to bribe them to operate on you, but
Yeah.
they misdiagnose you.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like universal free healthcare. It's not, after all, very free because doctors charge you for bribery and they demand you to bring all the medicine and needles, everything from the patient.
So they expect the patients to bring those things.
Of course,
To
everything.
pay for those things.
Yeah, the gauze, everything is patient responsibility.
Right.
And she begged one of the neighbors to lend her money. With that money, she bought things from the black market. And penicillin they sell is a lot of times it's a fake. And there's no way, like we know it. It's a black market and government doesn't have the medicine. And the only way we can find is from the black market. So I was up during the surgery and screaming and fainting and screaming and fainting.
So there's doing surgery on you with no anesthesia.
They tied me. That isn't common in North Korea because they cut the bones without anesthesia.
They tied you down so you could not do anything, but they are cutting you with no anesthesia.
Yeah.
And they thought your problem was appendicitis.
Yeah.
And so they took out your appendix with no anesthesia.
Yeah. And
And you remember this.
of course, I remember my intestines were ripped apart, and my mom said she heard this sound that she never heard, like it's like slaughterhouse. And I lost so much blood, but most of people in North Korea don't die from cancer. Before cancer kills us, something else gonna kill us, usually infection and malnutrition. So it's better off you just not do anything in North Korea. That's how horrible the medical system is.
So you get out of there with your life, but it was misdiagnosed. You didn't have appendicitis. You had another problem.
I just had infection and malnutrition.
So now you are deciding with your sister, who's 2 years older than you?
3 years.
3 years
so
older.
she escaped first while I was in hospital. And then as soon as we got out of the hospital, that's when we had to, I asked my mom to escape with me.
And you were very forceful in this idea.
That's the thing. I mean, at 13 in North Korea, children is all about being obedient to their parents. I never spoke back to my parents. Like, I was terrified by my parents. It's like Asian culture is very respectful to elders. But something came to me that day. I held my mom's hand, like, I'm not gonna let it go. And you have to come with me to China. And somehow she listened to 13-year-old, like her daughter's idea, and she came with me that day.
So how did you escape?
We found a broker, and she helped introduce us to some men who knew the route to cross the frozen river.
Okay, now this is basically a trick.
It is because without the broker, there's no way we can cross the river because the guards every 10 meters with the machine gun
Okay, so
standing
they are
there.
bribing the guards. So everybody's in on this. Everybody's taking money. And the people who are taking you to escape are actually selling you into sexual slavery.
Yeah,
That's what's really happening. But you and your mother did not know this.
yeah.
And your sister did not know this, of course.
No, none of us knew.
So when you get into China, what happens?
The Chinese side, the broker telling me that he wants to have sex with me.
You're 13.
Yeah, I did not even know what he was talking about. But my mother knew what he was talking about
Yeah.
and begged him, take her instead.
So what happens from this moment?
We go to a house, some apartment that he has, and then we go in there. It's like brighter, and they were negotiating our price and selling us to a different broker. And checks our teeth, checks our bones, and see our condition and how much they can get from us. So we became a livestock.
Yeah. So you go from enslavement in North Korea to enslavement in China.
Yeah.
But, and we'll get to this, the Chinese government is fully aware and complicit
Yeah.
in this sexual slavery.
Exactly. I mean, the police guards, they are the ones buying these girls in the back door for their sex slaves.
Yeah.
They are the customers.
You're being sold down the line like animals
Yeah.
and expected to have sex. Your mother somehow prevents this from happening to you.
So, first trafficker in China, she did. And then they sold us to second trafficker. And then second trafficker sold my mom first and let me alone. So now,
So they separated you.
yeah, so I got separated from my mom. Now,
You're 13.
and I don't know where my sister is. My dad is in North Korea, and I was alone. And of course, this guy was trying to rape me. Thankfully, he had his mistress with him. So after trying several times, he decided to sell me to a different trafficker. But this time, he charged more money for me because I was virgin, and that Han Chinese bought me for over $20.
Say that again. He
Bought me for over $200, around $265. At this point, I was ready to kill myself. I was not going to get raped, and I was going to kill myself instead. And when I was trying to kill myself, he said, if I do become his mistress, he was going to save my family for me.
So he makes this deal with you, and amazingly, he does this.
Yeah, he does it.
He does this. So your father eventually makes his way
Yeah.
to China.
When I was turning 14 in October of 2007, he crossed the frozen Yalu River and came to China, and I saw him again.
How long after that did he die?
He came in October on my birthday, and he passed away in February.
So very
So-
soon from cancer.
Yeah, he didn't last more than 3 months, like January 19th, around that time. So
That story you tell in the book, In Order to Live, it's extremely moving. I don't want you to tell it now because I want people to buy the book and read the details. So for a little while, your mother's there, your father's there. You still don't know where your sister is. You are still in this sexual slavery with this pimp.
yeah,
And what happens next?
he loses all his money from gambling.
Okay, so we keep forgetting. I'm forgetting. We're dealing with big criminals. So he's big into gambling and he loses everything.
Yeah. So he couldn't even give us a few cents of money to buy food in China. So I couldn't even buy my mother some water. So I had to sell my mother because I couldn't feed her in China.
So you had to sell your mother. And what happens to you?
And then he lets me go too because he couldn't feed me. And then I was getting kidnapped by another gangster. And this gangster was a lot more scary. He was killing people. And
How old were you?
was 14. And I escaped that somehow. And then I found my mother, and then I ran with her. I ran with her from that Chinese fake husband. And then we found a North Korean lady who told us that there was a way we could survive in China. And then by then we were begging to get a job to wash dishes or like being a waitress. And even that job, Chinese people would not give to us. So the only place we were turning into was becoming a cam girl.
A camera girl.
Yeah.
So this is basically like internet chat rooms. This is like it's a sexual thing. Men pay to talk to women on camera.
Yeah.
Right. And so you and your mother found yourselves forced to do this so you could eat.
Yeah. So they would give us place to sleep and eat. And in that chat room, we met another defector woman that she somehow knew a contact information to missionaries from South Korea, Christian missionaries.
I mean, this is amazing. This is like the story you say you can't make it up. You are in this chat room doing this terrible, terrible work. You're 14 and somehow you get a connection to Christian missionaries from South Korea who, I guess, make it possible for you to find a way out.
Right. So she had a contact for these Christian missionaries, but path to going to South Korea from China is like making it is 1%. So dangerous, arduous journey. Most of them don't make it. Once you're lost in the Gobi Desert, you don't know how to get out of it. It's a very, very risky thing. And that's why we had to pray. We needed God's mercy to make it.
Well, that's what the missionaries told you because they believe in God.
Yeah.
But you, I guess on some level, you believe this at this point that you're praying to God.
Of course. I mean, every second when we were about to get discovered, and every single time they said, when you're so frozen, you cannot even think. You don't even know what prayer is. That kind of terrifying situation. They say, don't even pray. Just think about, Jesus' blood is my blood. Like Jesus' blood is my blood. Just think about that. And they said that will help us. And that's all we did is, Jesus' blood is my blood. Jesus' blood is my blood. And thinking that, that's how we survived.
Now, for the first time, you're actually free.
In South Korea, after many months of in Mongolia interrogation, we were sent to South Korea. So that took some time.
Okay, so it took a while.
Took a while.
And you get to South Korea. That's a whole other story, of course. You get to South Korea. You're with your mother, and eventually your sister. You do discover your sister.
Yeah, 7 years later. I found her when I was an adult.
You eventually visit the United States.
Yeah.
But I think even just being in in South Korea must have been a shock to you to see the stores, the prosperity, the free market. What were you thinking initially?
I mean, I just landed on a different planet, People was telling me, like, I did not even know what my favorite color was. Because, like, in North Korea, just teachers say, we love red color because it's a revolutionary color.
We love red because it's a revolutionary color, so everybody has to love red.
Yeah, the answer was already determined by the party. It wasn't something we were able to choose. So when people say, what do you think? And I was like, why does that matter? Just tell me what you think. I go, what I can do. That was extremely hard thinking for myself.
When did you decide to come to the United States? I don't remember how it worked.
Yeah, it was like at the beginning of 2015 to write that first book in New York. So I moved to America in 2015.
Okay. To write this book, which is titled In Order to Live, A North Korean Girl's Journey to Freedom. This is the book that I'm insisting everyone buy and read, please, and pay your kids to read it. We are really just so privileged, Yomi, to have your voice and to have this time with you. I hope we can have you back to continue. These are the most important conversations that we can have. So thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you.